Welcome to the Art of Adventure podcast. I'm your host, Mac Tegg. I'm an illustrator, and I created this podcast to get to know other artists who are creating fantasy and sci-fi artwork. Joining me today is Sam, better known as Skullboy, from Better Legends. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just wonderful today. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Firstly, how old are you, and when did you first become interested in the fantasy genre?
I'm 31 years old, and I've been interested in fantasy, I think probably since I realized what reality is like.
Well, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a carpenter. I used to watch a lot of Bob Vela's This Old House, and I would wear my plaid shirts, and I had a little tool belt. And that was my jam for a very long time until I think probably around maybe second or third grade is when I just sort of realized that I was kind of good at drawing, and people were telling me that I was good at drawing, and so I was like, I think I could just draw for the rest of my life if that would be all right.
Is anyone else in your family artistic?
Yeah, my mom is particularly artistic. She's really good at, she makes quilts and stuff, and she's currently trying to get into the online quilt selling game. So I've been sort of helping her with that a little bit. She's not terribly computer savvy, so me and my sister are trying to help her with that. And my sister studied to be a dancer for a long time. She's going into nursing now, but she's a phenomenal dancer. And my dad is just very handy, so and is just good at he's just good at a lot of stuff. So we all get by.
Is he the one who inspired the Bob Vela love?
No, I think he was more on the level of what got me into video games, honestly. Because my mom is a very DIY kind of person. So, and there was a lot of sort of early reinforcement with that, I think. She used to read the Little House in the Big Woods and all the Laura Ingalls Wilder books to me. And there was a lot of there's a lot of people building stuff and doing that kind of stuff in those books, and I always thought that was really cool. That's sort of one of the early sort of proto, it's not fantasy, but it feels like fantasy kind of stuff. And then, but my dad got me into Nintendo. He had an Atari, and he an Atari 2600, and he had an NES, and we used to play Mario 2 a lot. Everyone's favorite Mario game, Mario 2.
I mean, I actually really like the music, especially in Super Mario Brothers 2.
It's a great game. It wasn't supposed to be a Mario game, but it I don't know, it's one of my favorites now.
Ah, yes, Doki Doki Panic.
Yes, indeed.
Were either of your parents or anyone else especially encouraging to your artistic endeavors?
Oh yeah, no, they've always been just really supportive. When I was hey, I think I want to go to art school in high school, my grades were always, not always, but in high school mostly were pretty bad. But I think they were just excited that I had an idea that I wanted to, try and be a professional artist somehow. And they're just yeah, go for it. I mean, why not? And so that's what I did and went to art school. Did
you graduate or leave early like I did?
I am the rare graduating artist, I think. I feel like I had a lot of friends that dropped out or changed paths or things like that, and it didn't really click with me until my pretty late in my sophomore year. It was my junior year where it started to work for me a little bit better. And I think the only thing that kept me from dropping out until then is just sheer laziness. I'll just start moving in a direction and I'll just keep doing it, even if it doesn't feel like it's necessarily working. Because I think the first 2 years of art school for me were just me not really getting it and feeling like I probably should have gotten into an illustration program somewhere or something like that. But I mean, having fun in college, so I just sort of kept doing. I was doing a lot of sketch comedy at that point too, so it didn't feel like I was in art school until I started my junior year, and that's when I started to take it a little bit more seriously and get really into printmaking and graphic design kind of stuff. So it was interesting. But yeah.
Yeah, is that where you kind of honed your style?
I guess, yeah. It's interesting. Like I have at this point now, I bounce around stylistically, and I think that comes from like spending time taking graphic design classes, because you learn in graphic design, at least I did, that it's more about servicing the project than it is about servicing what you do. So it's like a really cool way of stepping outside your comfort zone and just, I don't know, working towards like a bigger picture, sort of like, what does this project need? And then doing that, or learning how to do that, or, you know, trying to figure out a way to approach it that's like a little bit different or cool.
I can definitely see that in your work. You're really consistent in how you present things. Your work has like a certain kind of wild, untamed atmosphere about it, and you do these incredible scenes. Where do you get your ideas from?
I mean, a lot of my like RPG work, I'd say, comes from, I mean, I like playing D&D. So like, you know, it's been a little while right now, but for a long time, you know, many years, I'd have like 2 or 3 games that I was playing in a week if I could manage it. And a lot of the stuff that I get most excited about in games is just like chaotic failure scenarios. So I think a lot of I realized this at one point or another, that like a lot of the pieces that I make are just like, they're right before the point of failure. And I think that's a really interesting time, and I think that's when like most games like really pop off, is like when everybody's like really like white knuckling, you know, their pencil and their dice and being like, okay, like the shit is very much hit the fan, and like how do we make this work or die gloriously? And I think that's just like a fun thing to try and capture. And then yeah, I think that's a lot of it. It's something between that and old video game manuals. I look at a lot of old video game manuals, and that's where I get a lot of sort of structural ideas.
Where else are you pulling inspiration from?
Let's see. I mean, I got really into comics just after college. I was sort of like my senior year of college. I got really into like Mobius. Like that was sort of my in route to comics. So I got into Mobius, and then like I got really into Hellboy after that. So there's a lot of like looking at Mike Mignola's stuff, and there's just like a lot of comic covers more so than the interior art. But I really appreciate like anytime that you've got like a marriage of words and text. I think that's really interesting. So I like to spend time looking at a lot of stuff like that. And like, if you look at some of, and it's just, I mean, everybody's inspired by Miyazaki, right? If you look at him, it's hard not to be, but he did a number of things that are these like really cramped drawings with like lots of text around them that I think are just like, they're just like concept art sketches for, you know, some project where it's like tanks, and, you know, it's just very crowded and cramped and just like utilizing all the space. But I think that I get really excited about like a really nice utilization of all the space. If I can do that, like, I think when I'm trying to like let something breathe is like when I feel a little bit out of my element, but I try to think of that as an opportunity for growth.
You mentioned filling up the space, and I think that you do a fantastic job of that.
That is, I think it's more a like a compulsion than anything else. Is like I had a friend, my studio partner and show partner in college, that he always used to say that I always gave my drawings eczema, because I was just like constantly, it's like I'm trying to like work a pattern into like every element of it that I can. And some of the stuff I still do that. But it's really fun. It's really fun to work like that.
You mentioned merging text and images. You did an interesting project fairly recently in which you created an adventure game that needed to be translated. What gave you that idea?
It's sort of a marriage of like the Voynich manuscript and the Codex. I'm going to get this word wrong. Serenaphius. But it's just the idea of just like, when I look at role-playing game books, I always see the image first, which makes sense. I'm an illustrator, but like a lot of like what inspires me to like play games like that or like just daydream about fantasy is just like there's like this manual quality to it where you look at it and it's like I don't read a lot of like what's going on there. I have like a working idea of like a lot of how games work in my head for the most part. And so I wanted to make something that like I don't know, just like really focused on the art. And then so I decided to do just something with it's called an asemic language that it just doesn't there's no way to translate it. It's just there to fill text space and to make everybody that reads it feel like an outsider. And it was just sort of I just sort of did it on a whim, and it's been really cool. I had a lot of fun with that project, and it was really cool to just start by like just slapping down images and then just like filling in text around them and sort of coming up with like what the rules of this game would be in sort of like an alien way, but at the same time like knowing that there's like all these traditions in role-playing games that people are gonna sort of assume things about it and everything. So it's by far the weirdest thing that I've released, and intentionally so. It's just supposed to be, it's like kind of pretentious, I think. But it's I just like the idea that you can look at it and that everybody can look at it and get the same thing out of it differently. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. You mentioned Mobius and a couple others. Who is your biggest inspiration?
Biggest inspiration? Oh geez, I don't know. I can't focus on anything very long. Like I definitely have like ADD or something like that, in that fun way that adults just sort of self-diagnose themselves. But I don't focus on things long, so I tend to, my workflow is very much like thing to thing to thing to thing. Like I'll work on like 4 or 5 pieces at a time usually. So in the same way, when I'm looking at stuff, I like just like looking at big collections of images. So I just like in my spare time, I just like make these huge like Pinterest mood boards of like, just like I'll just like try and come up with a thing and then just slap as many things into it as I can. And so it's really difficult for me to like pin that down to like one thing, because it's like a whole aesthetic. And it's like, I think some of it's fueled by nostalgia, because like, I'm part of the generation that walked around in Blockbuster for a significant amount of their childhood. So it's tough to pin it down on one thing. If I were to pin it down on one thing, I'd say there was a book of castles that I read a lot when I was a kid, that there's just like cutaways of all like the things in the castles. It was sort of like in the style of like Richard Scarry or something like that. It was just sort of madness and like things like that. Or that's what I end up sort of thinking back on when I'm making work now, which I think that's like sort of the main indicator of like inspiration, right? Is like the thing that you just like can't shake, the thing you can't get out of your head.
Do you work 100% digitally?
A lot of times it's easier to do it that way, but I try to carve out some time in the week that I do just analog work. I try to keep like a pretty good sketching habit, to practice of keeping a sketchbook, but I also like to do collage a lot, and I try to do collage mostly analog, though I've done it digitally, like the 10 People You Meet in the Undergarden, that was a book that I did with my wife, that she wrote, and then I like illustrated, is all it's digital collage. It's all ripped from like free library resources that I found on Flickr. And so I did like Flickr. Something like Flickr. I don't know. I think it was like Library of, like the British Museum, something like that had like a lot of open source imagery. And so I just pulled a bunch of that kind of stuff together and made some pieces, and she responded to that. And then I responded sort of in turn to other things that she had made. So I think I think what ends up happening is I try to do work analog and then I find a way to make it digital because for my workflow, it's like I can do it quicker and be able to, I don't have to worry about scanning or anything like that because scanning's a pain in the ass.
Can you tell us about what kind of tools you use?
I've got an old Wacom Bamboo tablet that I actually just replaced. I had to find the same one because I don't like changing workflow as much as possible. I don't like changing it as much as, but that's a weird way to say that. But the I found I spilled some beer on it like 3 months ago, something like that, and I was just devastated because I got it when I was like, it was a Christmas present, sophomore year of college, and so I'd been using it since then. And so I found one on eBay, so I just repurchased that same tablet, and then I use Clip Studio Paint is the program that I use mainly. I have Adobe Suite, and I use that if I have to sometimes, and it's nice to have around. But I've sort of transitioned out of drawing in Photoshop because it's just like the new versions of Photoshop are just they just take so much space up, and they're so laggy. And they tax, like I run I recently switched from Mac to PC because I'm sort of tired of how bad Apple products have gotten. And yeah, just like even on like I have like a gaming PC that I do all my work on, and the Adobe just like chugs on everything. So Clip Studio Paint, which is formerly Manga Studio, is pretty cool. I like it. It's got a lot of good built-in stuff. It's easy to use. It was an easy transition, and you only have to pay for it one time, which that's cool. I don't like the whole Adobe model these days of like, you know, pay $60 a month and get everything we ever made. There's some things I just like want to own.
You're not the first one to talk about Clip Studio Paint here on the show, and it's seriously making me want to consider switching.
You wait till they have a sale. You can get it for like $25 usually. The basic version, at least. There's like a pro version that I don't think is super necessary, but comes with like a lot of sort of bells and whistles. I mean, I think honestly, if you want to, for anyone who's listening out there that is like, I don't want to spend a lot of money, just get GIMP. Just get GIMP and teach yourself how to draw in that. Draw in, you know, Paint. It's fun to use a tool that maybe doesn't have every option that you want. And also, most drawing tools on the computer you can use in such a way that people won't know it's digital. That's fun. It drives me crazy when things that there's like a style that has permeated most fantasy, and it's like I understand why it's popular, but it's like you can see all the digital brush strokes. And it just I just don't love it, and I think it has its place because it's like coming from this like tradition of like big oil paintings, but it just doesn't look like an oil painting. It looks like you painted it in Photoshop, and I guess that's fine for some things, but it's just like I don't know. There's not a lot of style in it. At least not the kind of style I want. I just like things to be weirder. I come from if there's a biggest inspiration in terms of like fantasy illustrators, I think I come from the Errol Otis school of make everything weird, and yeah, there's like a naivete to his work that I always really latched onto.
Are you working on anything interesting now that you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stick just to my own projects because I never know like what people want to talk about in terms of what they've announced. But right now I'm working on the ecological guide to Fortals, which is they're like something that I made up when I was doing some advertising jobs for the Melsonian Arts Council. And it's just a turtle with a castle growing out of its back, and I did it just for like a little ad space, and it had a little flag and an archer sitting in it, and I was like, this is kind of cool. And people started to like get really into it. And so I did a little bit more of it, and I tried to incorporate it now. And it's like, anytime you make a Troika product or like a compatible with Troika product, there's a little badge that you can put on it that's like a Fortle. And I decided it would be kind of cool to do like a travel guide almost. As like it's like a fantasy version of myself going through like the different spheres in Troika, because I don't know if you're familiar, but it's sort of like a multiverse kind of setting game, so you can do whatever you want with it. But it's trying to like hop around and like, you know, learn about like, you know, what a Fortle is, and that's pretty fun. I'm doing a lot of that sort of Richard Scarry thing in there. Actually, I've got like a big cutaway drawing of like the insides of a Fortle with all like the guts and like also like the bricks and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm a Troika fan. If you can't tell by my little user image there.
I say, yeah, that's a Dirk drawing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know you created the Fortle. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was, I guess it was probably a long time ago now. Like maybe 4 or 5 years actually. But yeah, it's all these like little things. It's, I don't know. I really love working with Melsonia. They're great. Dan's great. Everybody on the team is great. They just are consistently making really cool, weird stuff. And I don't know, putting like fun, interesting people in the spotlight. So shout out to them.
Do you have a dream project or a client that you've been wanting to do or work with?
I have a sick need. I do want to work on 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I don't think I deserve to, because I talk a lot of shit about that game. And I also don't like most of the art in it, but I do want it's like a clout thing in my head. I want to be in the big dragon game, you know, and I want to do it as weird as possible. Like, I'm just waiting to see if there's slowly they're doing things that are a little bit weirder in that, but I just don't think it'll ever happen. But it does feel like a little bit like a mountain I have to climb of like, I do want to just, I wouldn't mind having a magic card either. If we're going down that road, it's just like, it feels like for somebody I just stomp around in indie spaces so consistently that like part of me just like wants to, wants a big, just like, I don't even know if they pay well. I just like kind of want to live in that space long enough to, you know, carve my name into a tree.
Do you have any artists online or otherwise that you think the listeners should check out?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a big list of people. Let me see if I can try and succinctly, because there's like artists that I oftentimes look at and think like, oh yeah, I gotta try doing something that's more like that. Is like Peter Mullen is a great like fantasy artist. He does a lot of work with DCC, and like he's done like stuff for Swords and Wizardry. I love his style. I think it's very much also in that Errol Otis sort of school of sort of cartoony grittiness. But other than that, I mean, in terms of people that like I am always just like dig what they're putting out, like Nick K of Underworld Adventurer. That's his Instagram handle, I think. He does great work, and he runs a game that I play in from time to time that's really great. Really like Curtis Tinsley. He's really cool. He's making a lot of like sort of cool comic stuff. Marie Enger makes great work. I really like Gnarled Monster. I don't know if you've checked out him at all. He does like all this great like Keep on the Borderlands inspired stuff that I think is really awesome. And yeah, that's all I got off the top of my head right now. But you know, there's like 1.5 million like cool indie RPG people that are just always cranking out awesome work. Yeah.
So you're quite the gamer. What are you playing now that you'd recommend, either tabletop-wise or video game-wise?
Oh, man, I'm a gamer. Let me see. Well, last night I streamed Sega bass fishing, That was pretty cool. I'm in a sort of a Dreamcast phase right now, so I played through. I guess this is technically a Genesis game, but I played through or Saturn game, I guess. Yeah, Saturn. Some of Nights into Dreams, which is just wild, and I just picked up a bunch of like those old like Dreamcast games, like Jet Set Radio is really really good. It has an amazing soundtrack and just like an overall aesthetic. I really like the Sega aesthetic. Same thing with like Capcom games. There's like something like very toyetic about them that I really enjoy. In terms of tabletop games, I mean, everyone should have a copy of Troika. I also think that Old School Essentials is probably my mostly my go-to system for like rules reference stuff, just because they've got that great SRD just online, just like the whole, you can just look up everything and it's well organized, everything's searchable. And I'm always been a fan of the Moldvay basic set of D&D. It's just it's just simple enough for me. But yeah, other than that, I play a lot of dumb games. I really like playing dumb games. Like, you know, just like stuff that maybe isn't good, but is strange, and it feels like it was a noble endeavor to make it.
I think that's about it for my questions. Did you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, I gotta say, I've been liking the work that I've been seeing you put out. There's a real tightness to that, like that just like stark black and white like line work, and like you got some good just like pools of black that just like end of their stuff is really popping. You did like a War Duke piece recently that yeah, I really liked that.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It was kind of inspired by the War Duke, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love the War Duke? That's the, you know, I one of the things I love about like Keep on the Borderlands and like that sort of the Greyhawk setting is like the naming conventions of stuff like that. Like nobody in Keep on the Borderlands has a name, and you can interpret that is either as, you know, you just name them yourselves, which is something that I've done whenever I've you know played with that setting. But you can also just like maybe it's just like a world where people like just like refer to themselves like formally through their titles. I mean, you've got like, you know, the party is like the thief and the fighter and everything like that, but you've got like the Castellan and you know, and the wandering priest and all these things. And I'm kind of enamored with the idea of a world where everybody's just referring to each other, you know, via those kind of titles, and nobody really has a name. And the War Duke is very much in that sort of fantastical sphere.
Totally. Let the listeners know where they can find you on the internet or otherwise.
Well, you can find me. It's at better_legends on Instagram. That's a good one. Patreon.com/better_legends. Another great place to check me out. You can go on Twitch and find me at twitch.tv/skull_B01. And I do live streaming on Fridays there. And I also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/indoor playground. And that's where I play video games with my friends, my wife and our friend. We got a bunch of shows that we do on there. So yeah, I think that's all the places.
Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to I started listening to, I think, the first episode that you did the other day, and ended up having to switch over to something else. But I'm looking forward to listening through these. I love it when people make role-playing games podcasts. I think there need to be more of them.
I agree. Especially, I mean, there's so many like real play ones. I think there's a lot of information in the community that is not being exposed.
Yeah, you know, there's always been a thing with information dissemination in role-playing games. It's always been a little bit esoteric, right? You know, you had like the alarms and excursions, like gaming zine kind of scene, which apparently they're still making. Like you can still get, like they haven't stopped. Like there was some gaps, but like you can still get issues of alarms and excursions, which I thought was amazing. And then yeah, there's just like, I don't know, G Plus was cool, but then it collapsed, and Twitter is awful. And yeah, just I think people just need to make blogs and shows and Discords and play games and talk about them there. And yeah, I don't really care about Let's Play or actual play podcasts nearly as much as I like just like people talking about ideas that they have for games. Maybe that's the through line of like the way that game likers of the tabletop variety are kind of broken people. But I think it's most fun like that. Sorry, I went off on a whole nother tangent there.
No worries. Yeah, thanks again.
Take it easy.
If you'd like to follow the show on social media, check out theartofadventurecast.com. And if you'd like to see some of my artwork, check out macteg.com. This has been the Art of Adventure podcast. Thank you for listening.